Purposeful living is a very important pillar in my life because I suffered with this illusion of what purpose meant my whole life. I felt like I didn't have a purpose. I felt like I really needed one, and I felt like I didn't have one. And I'm talking like really young. Lots of you in this community know I lost my father at a young age, and then my identity with his passing, I found out how that happened with suicide at about age 12. So I had an identity problem. I identified as a child that pushed a guy away that couldn't handle it and left the world. I identified as the problem for most of my teenage years. I identified as somebody couldn't stay around and always left. I harbored a deep fear of rejection and abandonment because of the thoughts that I had around my father's death. And not only that, but my family dynamic, the people around me, the things going on in at school, and the way that I had zero self-confidence and um, envisioned myself. My self-belief was never really there. It was never something that I ever had. I always was looking and wanting to be somebody else. I was a big fan of the movies to this day, and Alicia doesn't know how I do this, but to this day, and I don't watch movies and TV as much as I used to. I have other things, other purposes in life, if you will. But I used to a lot, and I can still rattle off an actor's name and what he was in like nothing, or an actress. And it was because I always wanted to be somebody different. I always wanted to be the guy in the movies, the soldier, the superhero, the boxer, Rocky for a while. Um, more to come on that because that became a part of my story, actually. I wanted to be somebody else. And I would sit in my bedroom as a child and I would envision that I had this huge purpose, that I was a quarterback of a winning NFL team, that I was Rocky, a boxer, running up the stairs in Philadelphia, and all these people admiring me. And I had a purpose. I had something that I could live for, others that I could live for. And that was always a common thread. And I'm sure it shows up in how a lot of you see me. It was always a common thread. Hey, Dinka, it's cool to see you. Um, it was always a common thread in my development was what is my purpose and who am I for other people? And I'm sure some of you who know me probably can see that's where the heart side of me comes from. I always wanted to know what could my purpose be for others, not just myself. But that was something that at that age I wanted to grasp onto. Unfortunately, that desire to matter, that desire to be needed, wanted, around, whatever it may be, led down to me taking choices that weren't so good and wanting to fit in and little poor judgment choices. I was that guy that they say, hey, you can try this once and become an addict. I was that guy. No joke. I never wanted to do drugs in my life. I was scared to death. It's why I've never shut up because I was scared to death to do drugs. But I did it because I wanted to fit in. I wanted to be accepted. The people that I was around liked me. They thought I was cool, right? They were using me, but they thought I was cool. So utilized that yearn as a child from when I was so young and wanting to be somebody that somebody wanted to be around. Going back to my father's death, right? Like I explained a minute ago. And that moment that I did those drugs, I didn't want to. But when I did, that's when I became totally, um, for the next 15 years, I would be an in and out addict of many different substances because it hid the things that I wanted to hide from, because it masked the things that I wanted to mask, because it made me feel great at times. It made me feel like I was had a purpose. It was a chemically induced purpose, but it definitely made me feel things that I thought I wanted to feel. And um, to go back to the Rocky reference now, when I was 9 years old, I watched Rocky one, two, three, four. Anything after that is garbage. I watched those first four so many times in my life, like so many times. Um, and it really meant something to me. I wanted to be him. I was that kid that I came from the wrong side of the tracks. I kind of like my life felt like, we were poor. We lived in a trailer park. Like I wanted to be that underdog story that like Rocky running up the stairs and everybody admired you. And you turned around and you did something with your hard work that inspired other people. And one day, after I decided to not do drugs anymore, and I spare that story, overdosed and woke up and said, I'm never going to do this again. That was the last time I ever did cocaine. And wildly enough, it was on 6606. And I know that's not the way well, actually, it doesn't matter. They're all the same numbers. But in the United States, it was May 6th uh, of 2006. And I was like, not that was the last time that I did that substance because I thought I died, and there was a moment where in my head, seen my father. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to do something different in my life, and I did really fast. I think that was the first tornado moment of my life. I started working out. I started pretending I was Rocky again in my head. Now I'm 20 instead of 9. Um, Training every single day. I didn't know what I was training for. I was training to be a better person. I was training not to be a drug addict. I was training to have new habits that gave me a new sense of purpose. I was working out every day with my best friend. And then one day we turned on the TV and something called the UFC came on. It was these guys all living in a house and trying to be cage fighters. And I looked up and I said, I'm going to do that. And my buddy goes, no, you're not. You have nothing in you could do that. Like, yeah, I know we work out and I know you're training, but you're weak minded. You've never been in really good shape. You left the army, a few other reasons, right? Like, and I said, no, I'm going to do that. And I looked up online at where to find a coach, where to find a gym. It was 10 hours away, Mount Pleasant, Michigan, in the middle of, about 8 hours away, middle of the mid. There you are. That's for you, Melissa. But right there, I moved to Mount Pleasant. And within a week, like grabbed a bag, moved down there. I had a buddy that lived in a town right next to the gym I found online. I used the last $1,000 I had, invested in this gym. My buddy let me stay on his couch, and I absolutely fell in love with everything that combat sports meant because it held me accountable. It gave me discipline. It taught me who I was. It gave me habits that I didn't have before. I would drink every night to go to sleep. Now I would meditate to go to sleep because I needed to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and run and train. And I fell in love with what it meant to do that for me, to give back to myself, to be somebody that I thought and everyone else thought that I never could be. I was, again, scared to death. And I think in the beginning, I wasn't doing it for myself. I was doing it to prove everybody wrong. And eventually, with that, I was doing it for myself. It was everything I wanted purpose to be. And here was another start of my purpose journey that got a little distorted, where I again thought that purpose meant you had to be one thing, that this is what your purpose was. You're a parent, you're a paramedic, you're a doctor, you're a lawyer, right? Like, yes, you're a person and you have a personality, but you had a purpose in life. And I firmly believed that. And what I was a cage fighter. I lived it, breathed it. I didn't date. I didn't eat unclean food. I joined ballet to work on my flexibility. I joined Buddhist temples. I did it all. Every habit that I could have that defined that purpose, I had, until I couldn't have that purpose anymore. I had concussion after concussion. I got in a car accident that changed my life forever and changed my personality forever. I was no longer a calm, collected person. I was a person that would get excited over the earliest thing, the littlest inconvenience, the littlest change in my routine would throw me off and destroy my whole day. So my sense of purpose of being this locked in, disciplined, nothing throws me off, not even a cute girl passing by me when I'm training for a fight could distract me, to now the slightest little distraction throws me into chaos, depression, emotional distress. I can't even, at that time, I couldn't even really convey that well because I couldn't speak fully. I couldn't, a lot like I just did right there. I couldn't talk my thoughts out. And that took speech therapy and years of trying to like get that back, right? And I was told at that point that you'll never really, you're probably not going to work too much. You're going to get really dizzy. You're not going to be able to work out anymore. The fighting thing, yeah, that's over. My girlfriend's pregnant during this time too. So now what's my purpose? A hurt, no hope in life to do anything cool father. So I again had to have that singular purpose. So I became the best father that I could be. Still not a great, I wasn't a great human being. I was a great father. I was lying and doing drugs and drinking and anything I could do to make my head feel better in my mind, because I can't be a normal human being without a substance. And I went down 10 years of that. 10 years of that was now my purpose inside. My singular purpose was to be a really good dad and hide all the problems that I had from him, the world, everything. That destruction led to a lot of problems, lots and lots of problems, but still in that singular purpose mode where I'm not going to have a purpose besides being a father. I'll probably have dementia by the time I'm 50. So why live for anything? Like those were the thoughts that were going on in my head. Those were the things that were happening on a daily basis. And quite honest, probably following in the footsteps of my father. And if I wasn't a father and didn't have the connection to his death that I explained earlier, I probably maybe would have taken that horrible step, because in my mind I was in the darkest places possible until my sense of purpose started to get so destroyed inside, like so low that there's nothing left, that I couldn't go 2 hours without drinking. Like if I went 2 hours without drinking, I was shaking. And not a lot of people knew I was drinking. So I had to like fake that. I was in the car at work. I mean, it was bad. Like I was taking little shooter bottles and drinking anything I could get my hands on, just so I felt like I was going to pass. I felt like I was going to die if I stopped drinking, and I couldn't tell anybody. I couldn't tell anybody. Nobody knew that. But people knew that, right? Like, people knew that. My sweat reeked like alcohol. Like people knew, but my inner circle was, which wasn't a healthy one, was obviously not making it known. So, long story short, I end up drunk in a jail cell, and I'm completely like drunk. Like I don't really know what's going on. I don't even really know how I got there. And I remember looking up at the ceiling for a long time, staring at the ceiling. And purpose is bullshit. I'm not even kidding. Purpose is bullshit. Who you are matters. Purpose is bullshit. Who you are matters. Completely drunk, looking up at a cement floor, on a cement floor, regretting probably everything, feeling horrible. There, I've been there before, right? And then it's not my first time in a jail cell. I've never been to prison or long stint stuff, but I've done some stupid shit and I've been in jail cells. But this word purpose kept driving into my head over and over and over, that it was a lie, that it was a fallacy, that I didn't have to become anything. I had to be me. And I, in that sense, turned to a power source. And it was the power source that I knew in my life. One that I went back and forth with many times in my life. Angry, sad, close. Oh, man. And I went to that power source and had a conversation that I haven't had before. I've always hoped, wished, prayed, and dreamed that something was going to happen, that something was going to change, that my health was going to change, that my addictions were going to go away, that my anger was going to go away, that my feeling of like a shit person self-loathing was going to go away, that it was just going to disappear. It maybe someday. In that conversation that I had in that morning, I admitted to myself that what I was chasing didn't exist, that what I was chasing, I was making up as a lie to hide who I really was. And I was willing to accept everything that I was and to stay out of death or a jail cell. I would do everything that it took, and that I would do habits, whatever it took. Like, I was having this conversation out loud on camera. So I'm sure I wonder to this day, whoever was hearing that, if anybody heard that, what they were thinking. It was probably the most sane and nuts thing they've seen in that environment. Um, because I was really having a conversation with someone else in my mind. And I left that jail cell. I had no shoes. I had a sweatshirt and jeans. It was 110 degrees Fahrenheit. I think that's like, I don't know, 60, 70 Celsius. I have no idea. Hot. Hot. And I walked barefoot on cement 8 miles because I didn't have a phone. I didn't have anything. And that entire 8 miles, I defined who it meant to be me as a person. I let go the things that I need to let go. I forgave the people that I needed to forgive, including myself. I had this transcendental, I don't even know how many long hours all day walk. And probably people driving by thinking I'm nuts. I'm not talking in the middle of the country. I'm talking in a small city, Green Bay, Wisconsin, like downtown, barefoot, like walking to a destination, the only one that I could remember in my mind that I knew, not remember that I knew that I could get to. Um, and in that walk, I knew I was going to do everything it took to become who I actually deserve to become. Somebody I've never been because I was a chameleon. I was the drug addict for those people that accepted me. I was the alcoholic for the people that accepted me. I was the name it. Everything I was for that person in front of me at that time in my life, my entire life. And when I got back from that walk was when I came back to my buddy's house. The only person I knew, my best friend in the world and it's to this day and at that time, the one person that would hold me accountable, the one person that would tell me I'm full of shit, the one person that would be there no matter what. And he wasn't home, but he was there. He answered his phone. He said, "The door's locked. Just sit in the garage." When I got in his garage, there was a book, and it was Atomic Habits by James Clear. And it was just sitting in the garage. And I read that book from the time, I don't know, 2, 3 hours he didn't get home. I read the book in like 3 hours. And the next day I did that in not a way I don't ever recommend and don't coach in my wellness coaching programs. But I blew up every negative habit that I had, especially for drinking. I'm going to disclaimer this, never do this. If you're an alcoholic, do not do what I'm about to say I did because you could die. Um, I quit drinking. I quit sugar. I quit everything. The next 2 weeks was absolutely miserable. But how I got through it was meditating, journaling, reading podcasts, sitting down in my dark self when I was having withdrawals from these symptoms, working out. I did everything I could, drinking water. Everything was a new habit to replace how I was feeling. And then after that 2 weeks, it was like I became Brandon. It was like I knew who I was. It was like this weird veil came off, and I looked in the mirror and knew who I was. And to spare the next 6 months of that journey or year or whatever, I just poured myself into lifelong learning, mindset mastery, body vitality, all of the pillars were what I was learning, living, doing every single day. And the first client that I got when I started to turn that into working with people, I started to do the same stuff that I did, but at a slower, simpler scale. And she, after about 3 months, man, she came to me and she said, "I really have to tell you something. The day before I met you online, had all my affairs in order. My house is picked up. I wrote letters to my kids, and I was about to leave this world. And when you started working with me, I knew that I could live again." And when she told me that, I sat after the computer after my Zoom meeting for like an hour, and I didn't do anything. I didn't think anything. I just sat there. And I went into the bathroom and I went in the mirror and I said, "Brandon, I fucking love you. And you found something that you can do for the rest of your life that will teach you who you are and give back to the rest of the world." And Never stop doing that. And I love you. That was the first time I ever felt self love in my life. I'm 41 years, 40, I'm 40 years old. I was 38 at the time. It was 2 years ago. I've never felt self love for myself until that moment. So purpose isn't something you do. It isn't something you are. It's something you become every single day by the things you do that are you, not something else that somebody wants you to be, but something you find that is a true piece of what makes you tick. And you find that out every single day. So never stop being you. Never stop finding out what that means. And with that, that's my TED Talk on my absolute guiding light pillar of the six pillars of evolution, purposeful living. And I'm Brandon Kramer. I'm going to stop.